Okay, so welcome everybody, and I turn the share over to Joel and Lexie.
Amazing. Thank you, Rav Nachum.
Sure.
So I think we are going to begin with the sheet that I sent out with our Makorot, that a lot of them are Gemaras and a handful of Rishonim that are going to be useful background for looking at these Seifim inside in the Shulchan Aruch and Nosei Kelim. As you can see, there are quite a number of Seifim, and so we are not going to be able to do a deep dive into every single one. But I think the hope in these first, maybe ideally a little bit less than the first hour, is that we're going to go through some of the foundational sources, especially in some of the Seifim that arguably are more Lamaisa still in our day-to-day life. And yeah, so I am not, if it's okay, if everyone has the link, I can reshare it here as well. I think it's easier to not share my screen because then I can see everyone at once. Look, if you feel really invested, we can talk about sharp mirrors. I would say it's not something that comes up in most of our day-to-day lives, but perhaps I am over extrapolating. Okay, is everyone okay with looking at the doc on their own thing? They don't need the screen to be shared? Okay, amazing. So before we dive into the first Seif, I'll just say I think the Shomei Shabbat's Hilchot has a useful sort of introduction to this Siman, where the Shomei Shabbat Hilchot, also anybody know who he is? We'll probably look at some stuff throughout the year.
Rev Newworth's text?
Right. This is a very recent text. It's in the 20th century. Rev Newworth, is a student of Rev Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. And so most of his psak in the Shomei Shabbat Hilchot is Rev Auerbach's psak. So he gives an introduction where he says there's a couple main sort of components to the cleaning of garments, right? What are the main, it does have wonderful footnotes. There are a couple different editions as well. But he says, what are the main sort of forbidden components to cleaning garments? There's shriyat habeged b'mayim, or other forms of nikui, right? A soaking of a garment in liquid. There's kibus habeged b'mayim, which, as we'll see later, seems to be not just a soaking, but a sort of active engaging with the thing while it is in liquid. Again, maybe just water, maybe other liquids. We will see. Schitat hamayim, right? So the wringing out of water that has been absorbed in this beged. And Rav Joel, I believe, made this clarification. I think it was in the Mishnah Berurah share, not in this share this past week, but we have two different main types of schita, right? There is the schita that we're worried about when it comes to laundering, and there is the schita that is a tolda of dash, of threshing, right? So the schita in laundering, the main concern is that you are trying to get water out of the thing that you are engaging with because you want the thing itself to be cleaner and drier, right? Whereas the schita of dash, in fact, the main concern is that you want the thing coming out of whatever is being wrung or squeezed, right? But here we are talking about the former type of schita, which is a subset of laundering. And finally, this idea of sort of removing hasarat lichluch, removing of dirtiness on a thing through shifshuf, through rubbing, or through ni'or, through shaking. So the Gemaras we're looking at in our first Seif are going to start off with that very last category, which is the shaking of our garments. So we have this Gemara in Shabbat, with Mem Zayin. Max, do you want to read for us the Hamina Er Talito?
Okay. Hamina Er Talito b'Shabbat, Chayav Chatzat. Velo Amran Ela Bechadate, Ava Ba'atike Leitlan Ba. Velo Amran Ela Be'ukame, Ava Bechivare Vesumake Leitlan Ba, Vehu Dekapir Alayhu. Okay, so someone who shakes out a garment on Shabbat is Chayav Chatat. But this is only said about new garments, not old garments, and only about black garments, but not about white and red. And only if you, black, black, but not white or red. And only if you're careful, maybe careful also during the week to not wear a garment that has, fuzz or something on it.
Right. Beautiful. You've already essentially written one of our Rashis. So can you read the 2 Rashis that I put here?
Okay, I'm an talito min ha'afar, so we're talking about dust. V'hu dekapir alayhu leloshan ad shin arem. So you're careful to not wear a garment unless it's already been shaken out.
Right. What's the significance of that vis-a-vis why you would be got that or not?
Maybe because if you were to fold it under makeh b'patish, maybe then you're like finishing something about the garment that otherwise maybe you wouldn't matter to you as much if there was something on it.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. Obviously, as we'll see throughout our various simanim, unlike the Rambam and some other folks, the Shulchan Aruch is not so dafka about compiling everything specifically just according to like, this is this malacha, this is this malacha, etc. And so we'll see different topics where there are different malachot that are like our concern in relevant theme, right? But I think there is this element of if you are makpid not to wear it when it has this dirt, then you have fixed it in a meaningful way, right? You have done, there's either this makeh b'patish element, there's question of like, have you done meaningful kibus, right? Like, how are we defining kibus? Is it a sort of general term or is it relative to like how people relate to the cleanliness of that garment and in what scenarios that you will or won't wear it? Also, relatedly, right, how does that relate to the colors that we're defining this around?
On a black garment, it's going to be obvious that there's stuff on it.
Right, exactly. It's like how prominent are these things? And that seems to, it's an interesting thing. Does anyone have thoughts on why we define by color sort of definitively, but then we also have this element of whether someone is makpid?
I was kind of confused why Dafka Black would actually is actually more a customer concern, and then like the joke is that like black socks never get dirty, right? So did I miss something? Did you have thoughts on that?
I think you're maybe thinking of like dirt, whereas it seems like this is more like fuzzy thing, like stuff that's on it, right? That it's probably that like a black thing you're going to view like dirt that gets on it less, but like lighter colored little schmutz that gets on it, that you want to like shake off as opposed to like remove a stain might be more visible. Aaron?
Also, just for context, Alan and I are reunited. We're in the same room, hence the thought.
I was a little puzzled as to how Alan was speaking with you, but
yeah, there would be a different, I mean, this is a dark shirt. There would be a difference between me saying, I can't wear this shirt until I brush all the stuff off, versus by instinct, I'm wearing this shirt and I notice something and I brush it off, but not necessarily having intended to do that from the outset, or like without intention.
Joel?
I was thinking about white garments in their world, and really until very recently, I think in history, we think of like these really shiny white garments. I don't think they're shiny white. I think you think about like linen, when you have like white linen, it's actually, it almost looks like it comes out stained, right? It doesn't look like this pure white kind of thing that you see like in someone's kittel or something like that. So I think it wouldn't show dirt as well.
Yeah. So I think that's an important point contextually. And I will say because of this sort of interesting distinction where on the one hand, we have this explicitly subjective element of whether someone is makpid, right? And I think we don't need to look at the rest inside, but there we have some fun narratives basically of different rabbis seeing other rabbis shaking out their garments on Shabbos, and being like, how could you be doing that? And the answer is that they're not makpid, right? They don't like, because they would wear their garments and are fine with it if it does have schmutz, they're allowed to shake them out because it's not this makhe patish element, right? You're not really fixing it when it was already usable prior to that. But there is this dispute that mostly only gets brought in the Achronim of like, because we have these elements of color and hakpada, right? If something, for example, if I have a black garment, but I am makpid to only wear it when it has had this stuff shaken off, like, am I chayav if I shake it or not? And there are some, I believe it's the Biur Halacha, who says, yes, like the whole point is actually whether you are makpid, right? And the color was being used basically as shorthand for like, yeah, generally we think people, don't care as much about a white garment, right? Having schmutz on it. But if you care and you do this, then you're chayav. Whereas some of the other poskim, I think the Shulchan Aruch Harav, maybe Rav Avadia say, no, if it's a white garment, or again, this kind of garment where like color-wise, we generally assume people don't care. Even if you do care, it's still mutter because it's more of a cheftza thing, right? That they sort of split it into like a cheftza gavra question, right? There's the gavra element of how much do I care about this thing? And there's the cheftza element of how much does this like improve the garment, right? And they say, with these like lighter color things where it's less, bolet, it just doesn't really improve the garment so much. So even if you kind of care, you're still not chayav because it's not considered to be such a significant action. Ori?
Yeah, I mean, this reminds me of our previous discussion about clothing in general, especially when you talk about the black versus light colored clothes, because we went through in Shin we went through a lot of hoops to sort of establish that certain clothing norms are sort of beyond the gavra in most cases that pertain to Shin Aleph at least. What is actually wearing, what is a style, etc. And now you're talking about what's considered cleaning clothing. So I mean, it would make sense to me that the black clothes versus light clothes have some official designation, like this is communally considered cleaning clothing, which is why I think the personal makpid thing is a little bit puzzling. It's and very hard to adjudicate, obviously. Like, also, how do we, in the stories of the rabbis, like, why are you shaking out your clothing at all if you're not makpid? or maybe you just sort of like by accident did or whatever.
No, I think from the fact that they're justifying it, it seems like it wasn't by accident, right? Like, you could argue it as them being like covering it up, but from the fact that they're being like, oh, it's because we're not makpid, it seems that they had like thought this through and been like, I'm choosing to shake this out. But I think it's an important tension that you point out, which is that like, we'll see this, there's a bit of slippage, right? Which is, okay, why is it that we go from chayav chatat to mutter also is a bit of a weird binary, right? That often we see that there are the stops along the way. In a lot of ways, it would make much more sense to say, oh, well, yeah, you're chayav chatat if you care. And if you don't care, then maybe it's only like pator valasur because you haven't done as effective of an action, but you're still doing the same action, right? You're still kind of like fixing this thing a bit. And so there's an interesting sort of absolute that's set up here, I think potentially within, especially the makeh b'patish framework, that is like, we'll look a little bit more later also at how we define makeh b'patish, but that there is some element of greater subjectivity there potentially, which is when you're talking about a malacha whose sort of definition is you're like fixing something, right? You're like finishing it. In some ways, what is understood as finishing or fixing can become a much more subjective question than with some of our other malachot, right? And so maybe if that's the thing we're worried about and you really don't see this as fixing it, you really think it was fine before, you actually just like haven't done that significant action. You're like, oh yeah, I'm shaking off some dust, but like like it's in like a little annoying to me to have dust on it. Like I look a little nicer without it, but like I'm not so prideful. Like I can have some dust on my garment otherwise. Like I would wear it, but why not? Right. Rav Joel also added the element of like comfort versus niceness. Which, yes, leads into actually, we have so many good questions since we have so many Seifim to get to. I do want us to continue with this. Jacob, can you read the Tosfot, the Mina'er Talito?
Hamina'er Talito, Perush, Rabbeinu Chananel. Is that what the race head is?
Yep.
Min hatal shalav. The hayu kivus velivun chayav chatat. So Rabbeinu Chananel explains you're shaking the talit, from the dew that's on it, that this would be washing and whitening, and one would be chayav chatat. V'chein mashma have dumia de kumta de Rav Yosef, and thus we learn that this would be similar to the hat of Rav Yosef.
Right. This is his hat that we see in one of the later interactions.
Yes. Aval b'nior minha bar k'deperish b'kuntros in nira sheyach libun. But with shaking from the dust, as is explained in Rashi, we don't see that libun would be relevant.
Right. But they don't think that this libun would apply to a scenario of simply shaking off dust. And this also gets to the distinction Rav Joel mentioned of like, he says that if this is about sort of dampness, shaking off sort of like dew, right, then the makpid is potentially, but actually, well, okay, I'm interested, Rav Joel, according to your view that it's about comfort, how is that distinct between different colors?
No, I think it's only you would be makpid if it's certain colors. That the colors is a makpid thing and not about the comfort, right? It's guaranteed that if it's, if you're not makpid, it doesn't matter what color it is, right? So.
Right. That in some ways the distinction becomes clearer according to if it's like comfort and hakpada as opposed to those being like metrics for the same thing. Noam?
This is just a question. I know you said the Shulchan Aruch isn't so careful about classifying everything in terms of an av malacha, but are there certain assumptions about the relationship between kibbutz and the lamed tet of a malacha? It's not
Aaron,
one of them. Is it a taladah? Like, I don't know.
Aaron, is that an answer or a question?
Oh, it was an answer.
Go for it.
I think mechabes is usually understood to be a tolda of malben.
Okay. Great.
Right, it's understood to be the same broader category. Okay, but yeah, great question, because again, we do see a lot of sort of slippage between the categories that we're talking about. So we have these two, we have this idea of the mina'er, we have these questions of hakbada, and we have this big dispute basically about like, what is it that we are shaking off? And it actually has like real lamaisa consequences for in what scenarios we think this is asar, mutar, chayav. Right, so the main two positions are you're shaking off dust, again, seemingly just for aesthetic purposes, or you're shaking off tal, you're shaking off sort of like dew or dampness. So, we'll leave on the cliffhanger to see where the Shulchan Aruch paskins on that question. The Rambam seems to err more on the Rashi side of it's like you're shaking off like sort of colored dust as opposed to dampness in this case. But now, I did say we were going to get more into Makeh Patish, so Seif Bet continues with that sort of question. So Josie, do you want to read this bit in Shabbat and Seif Bet?
Just this little short part. Rabbi Yehuda, Hai man de shakel akupe meglimi, chayev mishum makeh bepatish, ani mila de kapid alayhu. So Rabbi Yehuda we have this statement, the one who pulls off this sort of extra knots off of his cloak is chayav because of makeh b'patish. This is the finishing, like you've finished the object and now it's suitable for use, assuming that you would have thought so. V'hanimile de kapir alai, which is his kicker at the end. If you are the type of person, or we are the type of people who are makpidim on little pieces of thread or knots on the end of our cloak, then this would be makeh b'patish. But if we're not, if we could walk out without it, then it wouldn't be a problem.
Great. So look at the Rambam. As you'll see, I gave different chunks, but it's from the same halacha. The Rambam groups a lot of these things together, all under these different this category of makeh b'patish. So do you want to read the halakot?
Halakot yivulot shal b'gabei v'gadim b'yado kigon elo hivulot shebechlit tzemer chayav mishum
Nor
makeh.
the pay, it's because of Bar Ilan.
That's fine. Mishum makeh b'patish. V'hu sheyakpid alehen aval im hasiran derech esek harazeh patur. So he's once again, there's got to be an element of kavanah or some kind of either you don't want them or you just don't care, right? If you're just picking them off because you're bored, it sounds like, or within the just the normal use of the item, and you kind of unintentionally or whatever knock them off, it's patur but asur still. You shouldn't do it, but you don't have a
Great. So this is actually underrated. The Rambam has taken a pretty dramatic step in how he's defining hakpada, right? How is he defining hakpada, and what would be an alternative way of defining it here?
So, I mean, he's calling it makeh b'patish.
Well, so that's him talking about like what is the isser going on here.
Oh,
but
hakada, you mean?
Yeah. Noam?
It seems like he's just defining it as it's just deliberately taking it off. An alternative way of defining it would be like you would refuse to wear any garment that has that kind of thing. That would actually be a more makel standard. And you could deliberately take it off, but you wouldn't be makpid in your kind of general disposition.
Right, exactly. But there are real nafkaminas to this, where we have, on the one hand, if you define it the way the Rambam does, he's like, yeah, if you're doing it intentionally, regardless of exactly how you relate to those chutzim and to the garment, you are chayav, right? And if you're doing it, as Josie said, just kind of like, you're bored, you're like pulling at the strings, then fine, you're patur. Which, it's interesting he feels the need to say that, because in general, we have this category of mitasek, where we're like, yeah, in general, if you're doing something that's not malechet machshevet, right, not really intentional malacha, you are pater, right? So it's not clear that this would, why you would need to define this as like its own particular case, right? Whereas the other way is to say, just as we defined it in the previous one, if you are makpid not to wear this while it has the little loose threads and you pull at them, you're chayav. And if you would be okay with it, but you're like, it'll be a little nicer if I pull at them, then you would be patur. Yes, ancient fidget toy. Okay, Ori?
And I think that last Rambam that we didn't read out loud, it sort of helps illustrate it, because he's reading the Ni'ur as sort of like Kederech HaUmanim Osim. Like, so like, if you imagine a world in which when worksmen finish clothes like this, they always shake out the extra white wool or whatever it is, then it strengthens, I understand this might be a separate case, but it sort of strengthens the theoretical link between, makeh b'patish also, in a way, right? Literally, you finish, the last thing you do when you make a garment like this is you shake it off, and that's sort of that's like your intentionality when you do an act like that with your clothing. It's just a little bit neater, his categories, I guess. And I don't know in real world if it's as easy as that, but in the society of that time, it seems like you would have had this finishing of a clothing in the back of your mind, like an omanim.
Yeah, I would say, as is something I think we see a lot with the Rambam, is categories maybe are not always perfectly in line with the development of the Gemara, but are very like make a lot of sense, right? Like are very clear, I think, useful categories. And we'll see that like across the Siman, it's interesting in the ways that the Mechaber sometimes paskins like the Rambam and sometimes does not. So another bit to hold on to for the next half. I think, again, for time's sake, I'm going to sort of summarize these next two sources, but just to give us a taste of how we're thinking about Makeba Patish, I think we have this sort of tension, which you see these like these sources, these Baraitot and Mishnayot and Memrot, where they say these various actions you are chayav if you do it kol shehu, right? That like ha kodeach, ha migarer, ha me'abed. And Rabbi Shimon pushes back and says, it's only if you do the whole thing, right? If you bore out the whole thing, if you scrape off the whole thing, etc. And then in Shabbat, right, we have this statement that like if you are making like an image in this kli, right, you're carving out an image or you're blowing on this glass vessel, you're chayav mishum makeb patish. Again, it doesn't say exactly how much you're doing. And the question that comes up is that, are we defining makeb patish? Are you chayav when you have actually literally finished the work, right? That, for example, if the way the finishing of a certain kli is to like carve an image onto it, am I only chayav when I've finished carving that image, right? When I have literally finished the kli? Or is it that there are certain actions that are themselves understood as like gemar melacha, right? Like these types of actions are the last thing that you do within a certain set of, processes. And doing any amount of that type of action, any amount of that type of gemar melacha action will make you chayav, even if you have not actually fully completed the object, right? So how would that map onto our question here of like pulling off the threads? Jacob?
Well, I guess it's a matter of, are you like in the process of finishing it, so to speak, by pulling one thread, even though it's not all the threads pulled off. If you pull up all the threads, then maybe that'll be fully finishing it. But if it's just one.
Right. That is it that like the pulling of the threads, if you're makpid about this, is itself an action of gemar malacha. And so therefore, if you've only pulled out one, even if you have other loose threads, you're chayav because you've engaged in this like gemar malacha act. Or do we say, no, if you're makpid about it, you haven't like completed this garment until you've gotten all of the loose threads done. And so just doing one of them would not be chayav. Rav Landis, I think you had your hand up earlier.
Yeah, I did. I missed the first couple of minutes. I'm sorry. So I'm not sure to what degree you mentioned this. Two factors, factors about the Mitzias, about the Mitzias of what took place. First of all, how white was white in that example? How white was white? We have all seen the movies about Yashka, and he's always in perfect. He was a rabbi. He was out there with all the other rabbis, and he's always floating around with these beautiful white garments. I don't think we have white garments like that. That's one. More practically, here's a shaila. I was synagogue rav for some years. Here's what I would always tell the parents of the. I'll lead up to it. Yeah, people knew what actions were. People knew what fluffing the wool was. They knew. It was immediate. Well, we're in a place that we look at the halacha and try to figure out. It's a little bit different. They know what these things are. So here's my example. When I used to have to tell the parents of the bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah girl, and I say, "What else, Rabbi, can you tell me before the big day?" And I said, it was always on Shabbos. I'd say, take off the price tag before Shabbos. Because the price tag is really maket patish. By the way, what do you do when they show up that way? That's why we had a Shabbos goy in the show. was basically for that purpose, is take off the tags. All right, I just wanted to get back.
Probably we'll get into Shabbos Goy Halachot. Probably still not ideal to have a Shabbos Goy pull off the tag.
Say it again. I'm sorry.
I said probably still not ideal to have the Shabbos Goy pull off the tag, but but better than them doing it themselves if that was the only alternative.
Okay.
Okay, so we are going to, depends on if it's still right or Durabanan. Well, okay, Rav Joel, as we'll get into, even if it's Durabanan, if it's not for a mitzvah, you cannot lichatchila tell a non-Jew to do a thing that is forbidden. Anyhow, moving onward, we are going
a quick comment just about your thing about the removing the balot. I think that the Rambam wants to say that it's makeh b'patish because you can't really say it's weaving because the garment is like there's a garment there. You didn't really weave the garment. The garment's finished. It's basically wearable. It's a wearable garment, and you're just improving it. So maybe even though it's an incremental improvement, because like you said, maybe it's not the last bullet. Maybe there's many more. But you're maybe improving something that's already done is called makeh b'patish, according to Rambam.
Yeah. No, I think we'll see again that this isn't the last time we'll see makeh b'patish, but like it becomes a bit of a grab bag in some cases because there's a lot of things that were like, that's definitely usher, but it's hard for various reasons to make it really clearly fit under that sort of broader malacha that it otherwise might look like. And so we're like, well, it's because it's makeh b'patish. It's like finishing something. It's making something useful. Like, completing this last necessary act. Okay.
So my example about the price tag also flows from the fact. So they pick up the suit. Maybe they do for the bar mitzvah boy, and they do some something to the trousers or what else. And the equivalent for the girl, bat mitzvah girl. But parents don't do anything else. Very few of you had your bar mitzvah suit or bat mitzvah dress made by your mother. Very good mother, but she didn't make that suit for you. The reason why I say it is that many contemporary poskim, I haven't looked at it in a long time, that were in, I think it's Rav Moshe and a couple other poskim said, yes, taking off the price tag is that problem because it's your dua that you're not finished with it until you take off the price tag. Anyway, I'm done. I just don't want to argue it out. I just want to give that.
Okay, so we press onward despite all these fun discussions because so much to cover in so little time. Now we're getting to folding garments. Reuven, do you want to read Shabbat Kuf Yud Gimel and Sif Gimel?
I'll be happy to, yes. Okay. Amaniti. Mechaplin et hakelim afilu arba b'chamisha pa'amim. So you can fold clothes that you've removed from yourself up to even 4 or 5 times. Sorry, 1 second. Gemara. Amri devei Rabbi Yanai. Lo shanu ela ba'adam echad, aval b'shtei bnei adam lo. U'v'adam echad nami lo amran ela b'chadashim, aval b'shenim lo. B'chadashim nami lo amran ela bilvanim, aval b'tzvuim lo. V'lo amran ela she'en lo lahachlif, aval yesh lo lahachlif lo. Okay. So Rabbi Yanai said that this is only taught about one person, that one person can do this, fold clothes up to 4 or 5 times, but 2 people cannot do this. And even for one person alone, they can only do this with new clothes, but not with old clothes. And even when we're with regard to new clothes, this was only taught with regard to white clothes, but colorful clothing, no. And still, this was only said with regard to those who do not have another garment to wear. But if they do have another garment, then no, they cannot do this.
So we have the Mishnah, which is like, yes, you can fold garments. And like you can also, it continues, like you can make beds like on Shabbos for Shabbos day, etc. And then the Gemara immediately is like, we're going to dial it back a lot. Look at can you read the Rashi on the 2 Rashis I put here?
Yes. Okay. בשני בני אדם, שמקפילין אותן מפשטין כמתיהן, ונראים כמתקנין. So with regard to two people doing this, which is not permitted, because when they fold it, they spread it out they smooth out the wrinkles, and it appears to be improved. Should I do the, sorry.
Like, yeah, no, exactly. As opposed to sort of like folding and like setting something aside, you're like fixing it in some way, right? It is improving the garment itself, right? And similarly with Yeshimim.
Is it that the beged seems better, or is it rather that the person seems like he's doing the malacha called mitaken?
I would say, well, so it's a great question. And we'll see that throughout several of these seifim, we have also these questions of when are we actually worried about the action versus when is it more about this question of like the Marasayan element of like, what does it look like you're doing? Going back also to our whole refuah question that we had. But here it seems that like Rashi is basically saying, certainly if you are actually smoothing out the wrinkles in a way that fixes the garment, that's a problem. And also if two people were doing it, potentially maybe even if you were doing it in a way that didn't do that perfectly, because that's often how it works, because two people spreading it out often works this way and actually fix the garment. You can't do it stam. And yes, we will get more into Psik ratio later. Don't worry. Joel?
I was wondering, maybe someone, if you look in Masechet Tanit in the 4th chapter, the whole question of what counts as washing clothes before Tisha B'Av, right? In the Shavuot Shechalbo, there's the Bavli says that, in Eretz Yisrael, yeah, washing in water, that's what does it. But for us, it's ironing, right? That's like the finishing. And like really, that's a major part, at least in some areas of Chazal, some places that they live, a major part of like laundering garments is actually getting the wrinkles out. And so it's the action itself maybe is problematic here.
Do you think there's a proof in text here for your what you're saying?
I don't. That's the thing. I'm just.
I think there is. I think there's.
You do. Yeah.
I think that because it says at the end, "Ein lo aval yesh lo lachlif lo." So we're only talking about, in other words, we're only allowing him if he has what. In other words, what does it mean he doesn't have to change? It means that he's folding this thing to wear it. Usually we think of folding things to put them away on the shelf. He's not folding it to put it away on the shelf. He's folding it to wear it. Because he has nothing else.
With the kalbo, so this will come up the different ways of like how and why we're folding. But yeah, there's this element of it's talking about folding to wear. And the question is, how much are you sort of fundamentally altering or improving the garment in that folding? Clearly you're doing something effective regardless, right? That like, if it was doing nothing, you wouldn't bother, right? So the question is sort of how much do we think it impacts the garment, right? And this is part of like, it says for the Yeshenim that like impacts them more, right? Because like the newer garments are more sort of stiff, right? And so they don't get as creased, right? And so the Yeshenim need this folding more. So continuing, this might be don't worry, there are some heterim that come up around this, but Jess, do you want to read the Tosfot on Kaflim Kelim?
Sure. Kaflim Kelim וכולי. מכאן למדנו אסור לקפל תליטות של, and I assumed at the time this was Bala Bayit. I wasn't totally sure about that. Beit HaKnesset, that makes more sense. לפי שהם צורך מחר. So from here we learn that it's forbidden to fold shul talitot because that's for the needs of the next day, not for Shabbat.
Right, that like when davening is done for, like when you're wearing your talis for the last time on Shabbos and you're folding it up, they're like, you're not doing that for Shabbos. That's just preparing for tomorrow. No?
Just if I understood Rav Nachum correctly before, it's folding in order to wear, but this Tosfot seems to not be talking about that. And this is talking about folding in order to put away. Otherwise, sort of makar wouldn't make sense.
I think it's still about to wear. I think the two of those are connected to an extent, right? That it's like you're folding it in a way that makes it like nicer to wear, in the way that you would want it to be like creased or not creased to wear it the next time. And that
Oh,
includes
to wear the
folding
next
it.
time. Oh, I misunderstood. Okay.
By the way, I
Jeff?
think Beit Hay is Beit Knesset, no?
Yeah, that's what we said.
Oh, okay.
Jess?
Well, I was just going to say that I don't think, Noam, you're disagreeing with Rev Nachum. I think it's that it's asur when you're folding it for the next day, and it's mutar when you're folding it to wear, potentially. But I think everyone got that without me.
Also, sorry, I realized that I feel like
Exactly. It's mutter when you're folding it to wear, but only on certain conditions. And those are all the conditions.
Rubber Rabbi Jess. And same with Alan as well. Okay. So we have the kalbo. So Jess, do you want to read the kalbo as well?
Sure. ירושלמי המקפל הספסלה כתרים בני אדם דמה ואסור, פירוש שהמקפל על הספסל מותחה ומשפט כמותיו הוא תיקון גמור. ועכשיו שנוהגים לקפל כל הכלים, אפשר דכפול דידן לא דמה לכפול שלהן, שהיו כבדים מאוד לפשט כמותיו, והניחו תחת המכבש, ולא כן אנחנו עושים. So the Kolba quotes this Yerushalmi about when someone folds something on a bench, then that would be forbidden. And he explains that this kind of like straightening out all the wrinkles is forbidden because that would be tikkun gamor. But these days we have the custom of folding all our clothes, and it's possible that our folding is not similar to their folding because they were all some sort of makpid in order to straighten out all these wrinkles and put it under the makbesh, and we don't do it like that. So it's possible that actually folding has changed and the way we think about it has changed.
Right. One of many fun examples of the rabbis being like, yeah, categories, like the same like action. It's not like there's a term that fundamentally means the same thing throughout the halacha. They're folding. They were talking about the way folding was used for them. And if it doesn't mean that now, if that's not how we're relating to folding, if we fold all our things, not because it like really fundamentally alters the garment, it's just like what we do with our clothes, maybe it's totally fine. Maybe that's like a casual, not particularly reparative action. And we'll see this be referenced later on in the base Yosef as well. Okay, I think, Ori?
I was just going to say, and the talus one, I think, is sort of what I've heard quoted as like the most lamaisa thing that really has come into common practice. So to worry about folding your talus, but it's in a sort of ironic way, it's davka because of the like, it's not for Shabbat, it's for tomorrow. But I wonder now how to understand it because that folding, I mean, it does seem less impactful. You're certainly not folding it because you want the kmatim. I guess you're folding it because you don't want it to be in a ball and lots of new kmatim. So it is
right,
preparatory in that sense.
Yeah, you want it to be folded in a way that like prevents it from creasing in ways you don't want it to crease. Aaron, and then I think we'll move on to the next week just because of time's sake.
No. I think also just the way people typically fold talitot, it's also like mishum kavod, that there's a sense that if I don't fold my talis, I'm not folding it specifically so that it's folded for tomorrow. I'm folding it because if I stuff it in this bag, it seems like actually not der kavod.
I think that's very accurate, right? Like it's not like I actually am. I mean, like yeah, I don't want my talis to be weird and crumply, but it's also just like it's like the nice thing that you do with your talis.
It's worth mentioning it in case anecdotally people aren't familiar with this practice, but the one I grew up with and my father always did was you fold it backwards after Shachrit, and then you go after Mariv, the last thing you do is you refold it normal. So yes, to fold it backwards is not in its right, right folding, and then he would redo it. So I haven't figured out how to do that in my adult life with my talis because I don't know which way is backwards and which way is forwards.
Rav Joel might get into this, but there are various Rishonim and Achronim that talk about like whether there is the same problem if you fold along different folds, basically, that maybe that is not as problematic. So very much based in the sources. I think I'm just going to summarize in the background for a few of these. I think for the one in Sept, the main question is when you're sort of rubbing garments. if you're doing it, what are you doing it for? If you're rubbing something to sort of improve the color, and we'll get at that as well, that's usher because that's part of milaben, right? That's like part of this element of like laundering. If you're rubbing it because you want it to be softer, then that's mutter, which is interesting to me, honestly, because I feel like I think of softness as also part of like, it would have made, I think, total intuitive sense to me to say that trying to make something softer is also usher on Shabbos, right? Like that's part of like sort of changing a garment. But the Gemara at least says if you're just trying to sort of soften it up, that's fine. If you're trying to change the color, that's when it's a problem. And so the later sources will get more into that. And then we have rubbing the dirt off of making it softer is making it more comfortable but less good looking. Interesting. Potentially. Maybe it depends on how you're rubbing it. We have this question of if you have dirt on your shoe, where can you rub it off? Can you rub it off on a wall, or are you maybe helping build that wall? Can you rub it off on the ground, or are you maybe going to be smoothing out furrows, or maybe only on like a little beam that's on the side where we're not worried about either of those things, right? We'll see, because of the way the sugya develops, there are some who poskin that you can rub it on any of the above, and some who are poskening that, like as the Rambam does, that you can do it on the kotel but not on the ground, because we are worried about this sort of evening out of holes and doing some plowing. Okay, Sif Zayin. This is about what we're doing when you have dirt on your garment. Ori, do you want to read in Shabbos and under Sif Zayin, Rav Kahana?
Okay. Amar Rav Kahana, teach al gabe bigdo mechas keso mibifnim ve'en mechas keso mibachutz. So if you have, I've seen this translated as mud, but also maybe some kind of, cementy thing. I forget what the word was, but you can rub it from inside, I think, upon itself, but not from outside, which I had a very hard time picturing what's inside and what's outside.
Go
yeah,
like this.
Right.
I don't know if you can see my hand so well, but I can't just like.
Right, but if we're talking about rubbing it on itself, or are we just talking about rubbing it in general? Teach al gabe bigdo. I guess in the Okay.
Yeah, I think it's really like, are you rubbing, like, are your hands on the other side of the garment sort of rubbing it and like rubbing it itself, or are you rubbing at the thing itself on the outside of the garment?
Okay. Meitive teach al gabe mena'alo megarro begav hasakin. V'shal bigdo megarro b'tziporin. So if you have mud on your shoe, you can sort of drag it out with the back of a knife. V'sha'al bigdo, it's on your clothing, you could use a fingernail. Vilvad shelo yechaskes, which I guess means you're just sort of scratching it, but not like really rubbing it more furiously. My love, shelo yechaskes klal. Lo shelo yechaskes.
What's the challenge?
Yeah.
The low is this.
Right. So doesn't this contradict what we read in Rav Kahana? Because it's basically saying you can't rub it at all. So it's talking about, it must be talking, to resolve it, you can say it's talking about from mibachutz, but mibifnim was always an option.
And then look at the Rashi on mibifnim. Why is this less problematic?
Mibifnim delo mukha milta leitchazuye kimelaben. Okay, because it's not for sure going to look like melaben when you do it from mibifnim. Melaben mamash lo heavy, and it's also not really melaben de'en noten shamayim, because there's no water involved. And I guess mamash melaben, it expects there to be water in the process. Kiskus dami lemechabes, but the kind of rubbing it is similar to mechabes. So we have sort of a distinction between melaben and mechabes here.
that we're worried. We see again this sort of subset, but in general, like we've talked about this notion that to do proper laundering requires liquid, right? And so ultimately we have this question once again of like concern of how it looks, right? That seemingly a huge part of the distinction of mibifnim versus mibachutz is just like, what does it appear that you are doing? Which goes back again to our question of like, what is it that we're actually worried about in these different scenarios? Going back to a few weeks ago when we were talking about, oh, what does it mean to like walk, even if it's for your digestion, because it doesn't look like you're doing refuah, right? Like, when are we worried about the actual thing you're doing versus, well, okay, you're not really doing something that's forbidden to begin with, and it doesn't even look like you're trying to do something problematic. And so in that scenario, it's okay. Whereas something that like might not be right to problematic in and of itself, but looks like it sort of at least toes the line of something that is inherently problematic, there we're going to draw our line, right? So rubbing it on the outside, even though that's not proper, like milaben, it's not proper kibus because you have no liquid, it's still a problem because you're trying to like very clearly clean your garment.
Okay. A comment or a question? Do you think that the two examples of the fingernail on the back of the knife are just a shinui, or do you think that's a lowering of the madrega, the quality of the scratching that you're doing? I'm never going to get over the. I'm really going to get over.
I mean, I think that that's a I think that's not how Rashi is reading it. I think it is a possible interpretation of the Gemara, right? As in, like, it seems that that is not the distinction Rashi is making. I do think that one read of it could be that this is a less effective way of doing it. But I guess, I mean, I suppose you can read if the thing is itself not that problematic to begin with, then you can read the doing the not that problematic to begin with thing less effectively goes from patur velasor to mutter. But often, doing something less effectively often, like it knocks something down one notch, depending on what you're dealing with. So it's possible that if we say this is derabanan to begin with, then if you don't even do it effectively, then actually it's mutter.
But it seems like it would be very effective. I'm not sure what's in the context, the sakin and the tziporen seem to be lo yechaskes, right? They're not really a significant rubbing. It's like sort of removing, or you're scratching it out, but it's not in any way a thorough cleaning, right? It's like, and then I mean, in shal bigdo with tziporen, it must be meaning like
it might mean
removing something.
It might mean that by using the back of the knife on a shoe, you are not, by definition, you are not mekaskes, because you can't get all the stuff off because the back of the knife is dull and not effective. And by definition, if you use a fingernail on clothing, a back of the knife on clothing might work, but a fingernail on clothing is not going to be fully effective, so it's not going to be mekaskes. By definition, that's what I was thinking about.
But is that a shinui? That's not exactly a shinui. It's just not real.
I'm saying it's not necessarily a shinui. It could be that's a shinui. The other possibility is that it's just a less effective way of accomplishing the task, and in fact, a way that won't let you fully accomplish the task.
I think that depending on what kind of dirt we're talking about, it could be equally effective. And that seems to, Rashi doesn't seem to be pointing out a difference in effectiveness, but I do think that that is a potential alternative explanation of this, right? Rashi is saying it's about how it appears, but another way of saying is like, actually, yeah, there is a difference in just the practical outcome of these two methods. Okay, I'm going to move us forward just for time's sake. I'm going to read inside. We're going to skip by right now. The Seif Chet talks about scraping your shoes, and this question of like, what is the concern vis-a-vis mimachek, right? Are you smoothing leather if you do that? What does it mean to be like rubbing them with water, right? And something that comes up is like, to what extent do the rules of milaben apply to leather, right? Like, what do we have limits as to what materials our concerns about milaben and kibus apply to, right? But now in zvachim, this is also going to be expanded into, depending on the material, maybe even if we think that some element of kibus or milaben applies to different materials, maybe the standards of what constitutes that differ, right? So in Zvachim, we have this Baraita, habeged ba'asak, chabso hakli ba'or megarero. Achirim omrim, habeged ba'asak ba'or mechabso ba'kli megarero. Right, so we have this Baraita that says, with like a garment or a sackcloth, you like launder it, and with leather, one scrapes it off, and or also with a kli, with a vessel. And others say that if something gets like sprayed, if the blood here that we're talking about gets sprayed onto a garment or sackcloth or on leather, you launder it. But if it's on a kli, then one scrapes it. So there, according to which version you're dealing with, there are different opinions as to whether leather falls under the michabso paradigm. Amar Rava, umi'i kalamand amar or lav bar kibusu, right? Is there anyone who actually thinks that leather cannot fall under the category of laundering? V'hakativ, v'beged o hashti o arev, o kol kli ha'or asher techabes, right? Rava says we have this pasuk when talking about leprosy, like the garment, the warp, the woof, any article of leather that you shall wash. It uses the language of washing in the Chumash to talk about leather. So he says clearly this applies here. Ella amarava kra umatnitin berachin keep dege bakashin. Right. So Rava says the verse here talking about leather and the Mishnah, which says that you can wash leather, are referring to softer leathers. And the case where there's a disagreement is with harder leather, right? That with more stiff or harder leather, that's where the debate is as to whether kibus is applicable. And now we get into a distinction of, again, first we had what materials does apply to. Now we have what constitutes cleaning. So Amarava, kol kibus deletle kiskus lo shmei kibus, right? Any laundering that does not involve some like rubbing is not laundering, right? That at first we have this statement seemingly that like laundering can't just be about soaking in liquid. It involves this action of like, there's liquid and there's like rubbing and cleaning, right? That's part of what laundering fabrics looks like. And now we say, Darash Rava, mutar lechabes minal b'Shabbat. Amar le Rav Papa le Rava, v'hama Rabbi Chia bar Ashi, zimnim sagin, havaka amina k'meit Rava, v'shachshich ele misane b'maya, shichshuch in aval kibus lo. Hader uki Rava amora ale v'darash dvarim she'amarti lifnechem, ta'utem bi'adi, v'ramkach amru shichshuch mutar kibus asor. Okay, so then we have this drasha that Rava gives, right, where he says you can launder a shoe on Shabbos. And then Rav Papa says, didn't Rav Chia bar Ashi say that, you know, I would stand before Rav and he would put water on his shoes, meaning you could put water on them, but you can't do like the rubbing. You can't launder by putting water and rubbing them. Rava is like, you are so right. He clarified that he was wrong. He had someone come and state that putting water on shoes is fine, laundering is prohibited. And the distinction he ends up drawing is that another line says that with bigadim, right? In Zvachim it says beged nami beged shriato zehu kibuso, right? With cloth, the soaking of it in and of itself constitutes kibus, right? But with leather, even if we say that it can be that kibus can be relevant to it, just putting liquid on it is not considered to be kibus. For like leather, there needs to be liquid and rubbing, right? Does that distinction make sense to everybody? Okay. And Rashi also explains the kiskus that we've seen a couple times of the different types of rubbing. So last, I'll read this Tosfot where we're getting into we're bringing in some sources that we saw in our previous Siman of Hai Mesukriata de Niziata Asor Laduke Biomatava. So this is talking about when you have like a stopper right in a bottle and the concern of like pulling it out because there might be liquid that's like wrung out of it as you pull it out. ואם תאמר, אמר בפרק בתרי דיומא, ההולך להגביל פני רבו ופני אביו ופני מי שגדול ממנו, עובר עד צווארו במים ואינו חושש, ואמר נמי בפרק בית הביצה גבי טבילת כלים בשבת, דנידה, שאין לה בגדים מהרמת וטובלת בגדיה, ולא גזרינן דילמה עתי לידי סחיטה, right? That it seems like there are various places where we allow people to get their garments wet. And we don't say that we're worried that they're going to come to wring them out. Yesh lomar de mitzvah shani. One possibility is maybe in those cases there's a mitzvah, so we allow it, but usually we're concerned. Vim tomar hechi shari hatam nichanes bigadeha, v'nidanami ech tovelet bigadeha, nema shriato zehu kibuso, k'tamrina bizvachim, beperak dal machatat, right? Maybe forget schlita, right? How can we allow these people to get it wet if with the beged we say getting it wet is kibus, right? Maybe it's not like, there's a gzera of we're worried it's going to be wrung out. How do we let them get it wet in the first place if that is already a form of kibus, right? Yishlomar, dafka hechad ika tipat dam utinuf amar shriato zehu kibuso, zebahachirayim miperak dam chatat. Matzari muga b'sefer hayashar, d'lo amar shriato zehu kibuso, davar she'eno ki im lichluch, k'mo sipug ba'alontit v'kinuach yadayim b'mapa. So we have two different answers that are given here, right? One is that maybe soaking things in liquid is only kibus when they are dirty, right? That like if you have dirt you're trying to get out, then if you soak it in liquid, that's kibus. If you have totally clean garments that you soak, then maybe it's fine, right? Alternately, Rabbeinu Tam, right, the Rif on this comment Rabbeinu Tam in Sefer Yashar, who says, if you are getting it wet in a way that in fact makes it dirtier, that's not kibus, right? If I'm walking through a river and like a dirty river, then probably my garments are not getting cleaner in doing that, right? So he's saying maybe this shriato zehu kibuso applies to a case where you're getting them wetter is in fact making it cleaner. Right? If it's wet but dirtier, that doesn't apply, right? I'm going to pause here just because I want us to have time to look at the various achronim with Reb Joel. The last bit is basically just getting to the question of, do we distinguish between different types of liquids, right? That, is it that any liquid can be a form of kibus, or is it maybe just water? Right? Like one position that we see becomes pretty dominant is maybe only water, because water is how you get things clean. But if you like soak something in mango juice, right, that doesn't make it cleaner. And so maybe it's fine, right? And then there's dispute as to maybe wine is an intermediate category. Maybe other liquids don't clean things, but maybe wine falls under the historian here. So we will see how those get paskind in our achronim. So I think we'll pause here and take a 5-minute break, and then we get back. Or if Joel can pick up with the achronim.
Shkoyach.
Nachum, maybe so I want a couple of things before we actually we're going to look inside but not read inside out loud yet. I want to try a couple activities, just two in particular. One is something I like to do myself, and I did it on this Siman, and I think it's important to know what's where in the Shulchan Aruch. It's always one of those things for me. It helps organize the Siman in my head, but also when you're trying to look something up later, you're like, oh, I have this question about this garment. Can I do this on Shabbos? Like, well, where is it in the Shulchan Aruch, right? Is always, I think, an important question. So what I want to do is actually, I want to go seif by seif, and I just want people to shout out, like, what's the seif about? And I want to take 2 minutes to do this. I want to do it very quickly, but I just want us to get a sense of everything that's there. I have my own titles here, but, I'm going to take yours as well. So let's, and just I'll call out Sif Aleph, and you just shout. I'll even start, right? Sif Aleph is about Minaer, shaking out a beged on Shabbat, right? And when not your makpid. Okay, so let's do, what's Sif Bet about? Just come off mute, shout.
Knots and pills in your garment.
Exactly, right? Also notel kesamim, right? There's actually an additional thing we didn't see in the Gemara, right? That maybe there's like some little sticks that are left in there and so forth. Great. What's Gimel about?
Folding.
Great. Folding. Very important topic. Dalid is
removing stuff from washing machines.
Sorry, Jessica, say that again. Rabbi Jessica, say that again.
I said removing stuff from washing machines.
Great. Or actually, well, in this case, I would call it what would we call it? Give me the
not our washing machines.
Yeah, the machbesh, right?
The flattening machine, sort of.
Yeah. Clothes press. Is that a good
press.
word? Right. Yeah.
A mangle, like a big flat ironing,
Exactly. And we'll see, right? Maybe if we have some time, I brought from the Piskei Teshuvot actually like maybe a modern application for us, those of us who don't use clothes press anymore. I don't think anybody does, as far as I know. There are professional ones, but not non-professional ones. Good. Hey, what is hey about? Exactly. Yes. So, right, the rubbing clothes after they've been laundered in order to soften them versus in order to to make them the color better, to make them more shiny, right? So, or get rid of the shine potentially. So, okay, good. Vav. What's Vav?
Taking the mud out of your shoe.
Good, right? This is you get mud on your foot or your shoe, right? It's interesting, right? Is it only about the Ramah is the one who actually adds? It's about also the shoe. Fascinating thing there. How do you get it off on Shabbat, right? Or you're allowed to rub it off on things, right? And it doesn't fall under the categories of ashvuye gumot or bona, okay? Which I think Rav Lexie, we covered that very quickly in the Gemara, but it was there. Good. And Zayin, we'll see a nice flow here. What are we talking about there?
Gunk on your clothes.
Exactly, right? The ways to get dirt off your clothes that isn't melaben, but still allows you to have cleaner clothes. I don't know, something like that, on Shabbos, I would say. Okay, chet.
Scraping a leather shoe.
Yeah, great. Scraping off dirt on a shoe, right? So you see how it goes, right? Teats on your foot or on your hands, right? On your then on your clothes, and then like scraping stuff on your shoe, not on a wall or the ground, but rather with like either your hand or a device, right? So okay, tet.
Whether you can use water to clean either your shoes or your clothes.
Great. And I think this is the place kind of where the Shulchan Aruch is covering the difference between leather and cloth, right? He's not doing it directly, Mechaber, but this is kind of where it comes out. Important distinction that we saw there. All right, Yud.
Taking the water off of your hands.
Yeah, I would actually call this hand drying on Shabbos, right? You dry your hand. We've got all this stuff about water is problematic, putting it on garments, and it's like, well, wait a second, I gotta wash my hands, right? You wash your hands a lot in the Jewish day, right? You wake up in the morning, before you eat, before you daven, right? How do I dry them? Right? Is drying not washing the cloth, right? All right, Yud Aleph is actually it's like is a nice continuation here. What's Yud Aleph about?
Dirt on your hands. You're washing for.
Yeah, it's like rubbing, wiping off your hands and like maybe doing it differently on Shabbat, using a different garment or using the tail of an animal. I've never tried that, I'll be honest. But that's a possibility. Okay. Finally, finally, there's two more. Yud Bet.
Drying a cup.
Oh, sorry.
Great. Drying a cup, right? Drying a cup on Shabbat or wiping out a cup. Here it sounds like it may not actually have been cleaned and then let dry and then you dry more. It's not the way we dry necessarily, but like it actually has liquid and you stick a towel in there potentially. All right. And this is where it's going to come up, the question of what liquids affect laundering, right? Does wine affect laundering the same way water does, right? So I'm just giving you this as a mnemonic. If you after that question, let's go back to Yud Bet, right? And finally, Yud Gimel, which is maybe at least to my modern sensibilities of like what I have in my house. I'm not really clear how Yud Gimel applies, and neither is Aruch HaShulchan. But what's Yud Gimel about?
Don't look in a mirror.
Yeah, but it's not just don't look in a mirror.
Black
it's why.
sheep. It's the black sheep of the Siman. It's sort of connected, I guess, through improving your image when you look in the mirror and you might cut one of your hairs, trimming a hair, I guess.
I will say maybe not. I think it's more like your clothes, right? Your clothes have extra stuff on them, and you might cut them off on the side of the right. Nimin Hamedul Dalin, I think is actually about your clothing, right? That's how it connects. And this is the mirror has got a sharp edge, but it actually may have a broader idea.
I guess the hair. I saw the hair in the Gemara, and maybe that's on your clothes, but
yeah. So, but I think actually there's a broader category here that is, important in some ways of don't put yourself in a place that might cause you to then, fix things or fix your clothing, fix your, your appearance on Shabbos. So not saying don't look in a mirror. It's saying, don't do it in a way or where it's easily accessible to then, fix something right in front of the mirror. So, like maybe a mirror with scissors hanging from it would be just as problematic as a mirror with sharp edges. So Rav Landis, please. You wanted to say something?
No, I'm asking you, what's the general organizing principle?
Good. So I think it's really things that are dirty in all regimes of the human clothing and body in some ways, right? This is on Shabbos and how we can and cannot fix those. That's how I would say he's walked through it at this point. So.
And the progress goes.
It really goes from I think clothing that you're wearing, and it goes then to kind of auxiliary things from the clothing. Things wiping your hands off and wiping your shoes off. Shoes, I think, feel a little auxiliary to it, and so forth. And then drying, actual dishes, drying dishes, and so forth on Shabbos. So,
okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's my sense. That's a good question. So. Good. I just see. I'm looking at my time. Okay, not too much, but I want to actually just talk about for one more minute. I want to go back to Makeba Patish for a second, if that's okay. And I'll share my screen for this. I think I have it up. Let's see. Nope, that's the wrong document. Yes. Since it was brought up by, I think it was Max brought it up. Is that right? This Yerushalmi here. So do I have sharing permission? I do. Okay. I have this Yerushalmi from Shabbat. Max, you get to read it for us. This was not assigned, so this is going to be off the cuff a little bit. Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish.
Okay. Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, Avdin Havei Behada Pirka Tlachnin Ufaluk. So Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish worked on this parak, meaning Klal Gadol, for 3.5 years. Avkun Mine Arbi'in Chasar Echad Toledot Al Kol Chad V'Chada. And they found 39 toldot for each of melacha. Man de ashkechun mismuch samchun. Hadala ashkechun mismuch avdune mishumak befatish. So anything that had like a natural tie, they would lean it up, or they would attach it to that related Av Malacha, and anything that didn't have an obvious Av Malacha, they would put under Makeh B'Fatish.
Great. Right. I used to understand this Gemara as, oh yeah, sorry. I used to understand this Gemara as there's like an organizing question, right? Like there's all these things we know are Asur on Shabbat, and we just have to organize them by Malacha. And they put them, if they couldn't find an organization to put it under, they put it under Makeva Batish. But I think reading the Siman, I have a different idea. So I wanted to share it, and this will be our kind of our lead-in, is that I think the idea here is that Makeva Batish is actually like a major issue that kind of comes into, if not every malacha of Shabbat, a lot of them, where a lot of them are about a finished product, right? Not all, especially not a lot of the ones involving making food, but there, and I think Milah Ben is one of those, is like, what is it that takes a garment from unwearable to wearable? Or like something that I don't care, to wear, that's something I do care to wear. And so I think that this is why Makebe Patish and Milah Ben are going to kind of like, some of these things to be one or the other, and they're so close to each other in so many ways in terms of garments. So I just want to present that as an overarching theory here.
Joe?
Yeah, please, Rav Landis.
Just say the story itself is Makeba Patish. They worked on it for several years. They couldn't finish it, and they finally finished it. That's the Makeba Patish.
That's amazing. I never thought about that. The overarching beauty of that sugya. Yeah, that's that they are finishing the job of categorization of Shabbat by putting things in Makeva Batish. So they are, amazing. Okay, good. So now that we have those categories out, let's talk about, I got to find my sheet with all my stuff, but some of the stuff that we're going to deal with here. So let's start with Mena'er. And here's my question. Let's everyone go to the tour for this. Let's go to the tour for a few minutes. And this is just like, and maybe I'll ask it out, just like we learned with Rav Lexie, but if I'm shaking out my garment on Shabbat, what are the factors that allow me to be chayav, make me chayav for shaking it out? Alan, please.
Yes, new and the color, black.
The color, good. It has to be right a dark garment, right? We saw that maybe dark doesn't dafka mean dark, right? But it has to be dark. Okay, good. What else? Did you say new? Did you also say that category?
It's new and it's got to be dark.
Okay, great. So it has to be new. It has to be dark. All right. And there's one more thing, which isn't about the garment itself. It's Aaron.
You have to not be makpid.
But or to be chayav, you have to be makpid. Let's put it in that sense. Yes, but you are right. Good. So so I'm makpid to shake it out. Like, does it matter? Why is that important if I'm makpid or not? See, I see Alan said, I'm gonna give people one more second here. Or Sarah.
If you think that the problem here is my kibbutz batish, but I don't care whether I would wear this garment anyway without it being shaken, then it seems like it was probably, just fine the way it was before. So that can't be the problem.
So good. Well, let's look. Was there another hand, Rav Nachum, please?
Yeah, I wonder if makpid means something different here, and it means I don't do it that well.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, not a psychological thing, but a procedural thing.
Amazing. And actually, I think that leads us into this great comment by the Prisha, which is like only a few words, but I want to look at it. Everyone look at, this is Prisha Bet. This is like only a couple words. Noam, read it for us. Since you asked me, I miswrote this as Drisha in the sheet originally, so go for it.
Vehush makpid alav da'az havei psik reshe. So when you're makpid, then there's going to be an inevitable consequence.
Exactly. You're going to do it right. Well, let's talk about psik reshe. I'm going to back up. What is psik reshe? Someone tell me.
It's when you intend a certain action that is not in and of itself a malacha, but the consequence is.
Great.
And that consequence is inevitable. It will definitely happen.
Right. Good. So someone give me, what's the actual case that's given in it's kind of given in the Gemara that we get the term from, but it's Rabbi Jessica, go for it.
So the case is that if you decide that a chicken's head would make a really good toy for a kid to play with, and you're like, if I just cut the head of this chicken for the lovely Shabbosdik activity of giving this child a toy, you are going to have the inevitable side effect of slaughtering a chicken.
Right. Yeah. So, right, this is psik reisha v'lo yamut, right? You're going to cut its head, it's not going to die. Like, of course, that is the inevitable consequence. And so it has to be inevitable, right? It has to be like we say, for instance, on Shabbos, I can walk on grass because I don't actually know if I'm going to pull up the grass, right? You know, it's but if I drag a bench on the grass, then I know it's going to create a ditch, right? That's actually the ditch is a classic case. So what's going on here? What does the Prisha mean when he says it's psik reisha? Aaron.
Is there a couple of possibilities, but one is if I'm brushing off the water, then if I'm doing it intentionally, the end result will be that I have laundered the garment.
Yeah, so good. And I think maybe also if it's the kind of thing where I actually care that it gets done well, I'm gonna for sure launder it, right? And I think this is where Rav Nachum's comment comes in. So yeah, I think that it's potentially, it only becomes a psik reisha if you actually care. If you don't care, like whatever, I just like did this and it's, you know, done. But Alan, please. Sorry, Alan, we can't hear you. So, because Aaron went off. Aaron went off mute and we can't hear Alan.
Rav Joel, do you feel like this ties into the concept of malach machshavet, right? Like it does seem similar to a couple of the cases in previous weeks of just having commandment determined and
yeah,
the completed task determine whether or not it's malach.
This is a deeper question. Maybe we'll do something like this at some point, and maybe my Rebbeim could say more, but there's three categories, well, really two, but maybe a third in Melacha She'ena Tzricha Legufa that come together to some extent, where it's like, is it a psik reisha because it's inevitable or psik reisha because I know it's inevitable, right? In other words, like it becomes a Melacha Machshevet because I know I'm going to kill the animal when I cut off its head. Come on. You know, and you know, like if I'm completely naive and I don't know anything about the world and I don't know it's a necessary consequence, does it still count or not? It's a good question. I don't know for sure, but I think the two are related categories. So, Rav Lexie.
Can you read it with the question about the relationship between this and Melacha She'ena Tzricha Legufa?
No, it was about Melacha Machshevet and psik reisha. I just threw in Melacha She'ena Tzricha Legufa as another category in there that circles around them, but I don't want to get into that one right now. So
right. I mean, it's the combination basically of like, am I intentionally planning to do this thing for the reason that one does productive malacha, or like they generally considered to be the broader structure of how are we defining malachet machshevet. Like you, and I do think that Rav Joel's distinction is a useful one, that there is some element of psik reisha where we say, okay, like fine, even if that malacha was not your original intent, like it's not the main thing you were intending for, you were actually intending that it's going to occur because you need it to occur, or it will necessarily occur for the thing that you want to accomplish. So you can't really say that it wasn't intentional when it in fact is inevitable.
Yeah.
Is it safe to say that psik reisha is a modifier or an ultimate threshold or something to malachet machshevet?
I would say it's a modifier to davar she'eno mitzkaven.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Okay.
That's obvious. Yeah, in the Gemara, right? There's a debate between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon about, you know, davar she'eno mitkaven. We've paskin like Rabbi Shimon that that it's mutar, not just batur, but mutar. But we get right Rava and Abaye. It's Rava and Abaye, the Amrei Travaihu, right? They both say that that they both agree that it's asur to do psik reisha v'lo yamut, right?
Right. But also it's a difference, to be clear, that the psik reisha is understood as being asur, but according to most not chayav, because since that wasn't the main intent of the action, right? Like unlike the Rabbi Shimon, which is how we paskin, that if it's like a davar she'eno mitzkaven and it's not necessarily going to happen, it is in fact permitted to engage in that action, even if the asur thing might occur. With psik reisha, they're like, no, it's asur. You can't lechatchila do this action because like you are knowing for certain that some asur thing will also come out of it, but it's not full malachet machshevet because your main purpose wasn't to do that malacha.
Yeah. So, Good. I'm going to shift gears. I'm just looking at the time a little bit. This is a good discussion of Psik ratio, but I want to just one question more on Sifalf, and then I want to jump. Right. We said Alan told us a new garment, right? It's only for a new garment that Mina'er is an issue. What's a new garment? Someone tell me outside. It's in the Beit Yosef in Aleph starting Umash Melichora, but there's two opinions. Rabbi Jessica. You're on mute.
So one of the opinions is one that has not yet been washed, and that's what the Beit Yosef brings. But then Rambam disagreed with that.
Good. And what was? Do you remember what his was?
Passing to Aaron.
Aaron.
Hasn't been worn very much.
Exactly. Right. There's never been washed and then never been worn. Are the two drachim for that possibilities. So. Okay, good. I just want that to be. I'm going to skip to Gimel, which is a big thing. This is folding garments, and I think it's so live in our world. Folding garments on Shabbos. So there's two. I think that there's two things going on in folding garments. So I just want to throw it out there. What are the two issues we're dealing with here? So why in other words, why is it asur? Two different possibilities here. Max.
Hachana.
Good, right? Hachana. So you're preparing for what?
Either the next day or the next Shabbos.
Exactly. Well, good. The next Shabbos is a little more difficult, and I don't want to. There is some stuff on this that that be preparing from one Shabbos to another. It might be more mutar at least than from Shabbos to Chol. So good. That's one. Jacob, go for it.
There could be market attached to smooth out wrinkles.
Yeah, exactly. You're smoothing out the wrinkles, and that's what we saw, right? The kamatim of the clothes. So we saw this, but I want to see it in the Beit Yosef also. Just the kolbo, which is in it's in Seif Gimel. Do you guys have a Tur Shulchan Aruch that the Tur has Seifim noted in it? Is that everyone has that? Okay, good. I just want to make sure. But if you see on Gimel, it's like it's Gimel short, but towards the end it says v'chatuv b'kolbo. We saw this with Rav Lexie, but I just want someone to read. If that would let's see. Who's a good Aaron? Aaron, did you read already? Okay, Aaron, go for it.
וכתוב בכל בו, ועכשיו שנהגו לקפל כל הכלים, אפשר לקיפול דידן לא דמה לקיפול שלהם. שיהיו כבדים מאוד לפשט קמתה ולהניחו תחת המכבס, ולא כן אנחנו עושים עד כאן לשנה. The Kolbo wrote, now that everyone, every which way, all over the place is folding. But maybe that's okay, because maybe our folding is not their folding. And for their folding,
so
they would be
maybe folding is different, or the way we relate to folding, right? It almost sounds like in our world is different, right? Folding. I'm going to quote. Maybe Rav Landis will correct me on this, but I think 5 years ago when we did this, Rav Landis, I think you said, if I remember correctly, God willing, I do, that folding in one hand could be fixing a garment, preparing it for the next day, or keeping it from wrinkling. The other version of folding is like just part of the process of taking a garment out and putting it back. Right? You take it out, it's folded, you unfold it, you put it on. And part of that cycle is putting it back. And it's not about maintaining the garment. It's just about the regular cycle of how you take on and put on and take off garments on Shabbos. And I think maybe the Kolbo is looking at it that way. Rav Landis, am I getting that right? Do I remember correctly? Oh, you're on mute, Rav Landis. Wait, Rav Landis, you're on mute. So we're missing everything.
No, I'll say since that I've added the third one, thinking about a talus, that we use, and so you don't want to be makalkel the talus.
Yeah.
So you're not adding anything. You're just making sure that it's not going to look messy. But you're not. It's hard to say it's the positive of error.
Yeah.
Harder to say.
Good. So. Rav Nachum, please.
Yeah, I just want to see, but I have a sort of a different way to read the Kolbo, and I think he's relating. I think I think the key word is makpidim, and I think it's based on the Gemaras that we saw that certain rabbis, when they were caught folding, said, "Oh, I'm not makpid," or "He's not makpid," and I think it goes back to it's not as like I'm just going back to my idea that it's not psychological, and that the Gemara is actually saying, and nowadays, he's saying exactly, this is the way the Kolbo reads it. But when they said, I'm not makpid, they're saying, I'm not doing it well. We don't do it carefully anymore. Nobody does it carefully anymore. That's what the Gemara is actually saying. We don't do it carefully anymore. And the Kolbo is just reading the Gemara and saying, yeah, the Gemara is saying nowadays we don't do it carefully. It still leaves something to be desired, the result into malacha, and therefore it's mutter. It's not because we don't we don't care about going out with dirty clothes, because we don't actually do the malacha properly. You read it to Dora.
But that, you know, also, right, we saw the Chumrah version of that in the Kolbo that Rav Lexie presented, which is if you're folding it on a bench, right, that becomes like a 2-person fold, right? If you do it really well. I was thinking about, you know, if you ever in department store, I've never worked in a department store, but I've seen, you know, they have those folding tables where they actually literally gives you the directions how to fold the thing. And it's a really good fold, as opposed to like what I do before I put my clothes away, where I just like hold it up and I kind of, I don't know, do some turning and it comes together. So all right, good. I wanted to jump for a second here. Let's go to the Shulchan Aruch. I want to look at the Magen Avraham in Vav. So I'm going to read the beginning of the Shulchan Aruch in Sif Gimel. Right, so Shin Bet, Sif Gimel, Mekablim Kelim b'Shabbat l'sorach Shabbat l'lovshan bo bayom. That you can fold clothes on Shabbat to wear them on that day. All right, so he gets into an interesting question at the very beginning of like, you know, what if you like have the ability to wear it, but if you go like maybe like for me it's the second line. He has ein matziin hamitot mishabat. People see that. This is Sif Katan Vav in the Magen Avraham. People good? They found it. All right, Sarah Zager, can I call on you? Ein matzin hamitot mishabat lemotzei Shabbat.
Happily. Ein matzin hamitot mishabat lemotzei Shabbat. Mishnah Rambam Perek Kaf Gimel. Vayen Tuf Siman Tet Reish Samech Zayin v'Siman Shen Kaf Gimel.
Stop there before he does the nearly. Just the basic law here. So
basic law is don't make your bed on Shabbat for use after Shabbat.
Exactly. So okay, makes sense. Seems like hachana, right?
Yeah.
Keep going.
ונראה לי דמיתה דעומדת בחדר שדר שם, ואיכה ביזיון ודבר מגונה שעומד כך, מותר להצניע לצורך שבת. So he says, oh, well, I think if it's like in the space where you're living and it's kind of yucky to have it unmade, then you can make it.
No, there's your living room. It's in your living room.
You live in a studio.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, or, you know, you have kids who take all the, you know, stuff off the couch on Shabbos and, you know, take the cover off the cushions. I don't know where I would ever get this idea.
I don't know where you're getting these ideas.
You have guests coming over, right? So, and so even though like maybe I won't use that couch or that bed, right, on Shabbat, because I want my Shabbos house to look nice, I can put it in it's like that is I think what he's saying is that's l'sorach Shabbat, right? That's even though you're not laying on the bed on Shabbos, you are preparing it for Shabbos.
Right, you're not preparing it to lay in it. I mean, I think part of this is like, what is the purpose of making beds, right? The purpose of making beds, you might think, is to like make them nice to go to sleep in. But another thing you might think is, well, the purpose of making the bed is precisely actually for like the environment to be pleasant. And if that's what you're doing, then like maybe that's for Shabbat.
Exactly. So, but so I think.
Well, Joel, you cut out for some reason.
Oh, I did. Can everyone hear me?
Now I can hear you.
Okay.
You said I think, and then I lost you.
Yeah. No, I think there's an important just principle in all of this is that for the stuff that falls under hachana, right, it's not necessarily, it doesn't have to necessarily be that you're going to use it on Shabbos, but rather you want it to be in a certain state for Shabbos, for maybe your guests, for maybe what you see as you walk around your house and so forth. So this is obviously right. You can't wash your sheets on Shabbos, right? Because they don't look nice. That's but maybe you could take them off and, you know, throw them, you know, in a closet if it doesn't look nice and put another set on. So, or something like that. Okay. Steve, hey, let's go.
Is that what they're talking about actually, as opposed to like what I think of as making my bed?
What do you think?
I wondered whether some of these like early sources are talking about like sort of setting up your bed for the first time, as opposed to what I am imagining, which is like, you know, what I do is like pull the sheets around to make them look nice or something.
Yeah, I'll tell you what
I
I
have
think
that
that's
question too, because what's the isser with the bed? Meaning, I was thinking making a bed where you're just pulling them tight, so I was connecting that a little bit to the folding, but it's not quite.
I mean, you're
I
like,
think-
yeah.
Yeah. I understood it. Well, Josie, you had a hand. What was you were
I
saying?
mean, there's also the whole thing with, you know, what kind of bed are we talking about? We're not talking about the beds that we have now with fancy mattresses and sheets and covers and you're talking the same type of mattress that you turn over when you were in a Avelut.
Yeah.
Right? Were also beds, these were chairs, these were, you know, you're living in a one-room place, like making the bed just might be preparing it so that you can use it to sit upon.
Well, I think this is for the visual here, you know, like feeling, but Rav Landis, I saw your hand and then Rav Nachum.
No, just the term we're using over and over again is making the bed. You're making something.
Yeah.
So either you're making it for, as just was suggested, for another purpose, for people to sit or whatever, but it lends itself to be, you know, that dangerous point. Is it us or not? And the only way to say it's not us is that you're really not making something.
Yeah.
You know, it's all there. The term we use later on is a sui lakach. It was made to make. The halacha was created. No, excuse me. The bed was initially created to
be
have
made.
two or three functions. And if they have the same function, three or several different functions. So so that's on the functional level. On the fact that it's mius, you know, just discussing, well, the admiral from Annapolis, he did this graduation speech several weeks ago, and several years ago, in which he told everyone, you have to make your bed in the morning. And this is what you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yes.
well, my mother, may she rest in peace, sent me a copy of that. You're not a man unless you do that, because it's, how can you live with unmade bed? So, you know. Okay.
There's a TED talk about it and how your whole life is, you know, your whole day and your whole life will be mechuvan a certain way if you make your bed in the morning.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, he studied with my mother, under my mother.
So, Rav Nachum, please.
Yeah, I think we're actually not getting the main point that he's trying to make. The main point is it's doing it mish Shabbos lemotzei Shabbos. It's hachana lechol. That's what I think. And therefore, it's not a malacha of making the bed. There's no malacha of making the bed. There's no chashash of a malacha. It's just that you can't do things on Shabbat for using them after Shabbat. It's in a similar way, like you shouldn't wash dishes on Shabbat for after Shabbat, so you can have them clean, you know, put them away. But if you don't like carrying dirty dishes around because it annoys you and irritates you, then you can do it on Shabbat because it's for Shabbat. And it's the same thing with the sheet.
So no, I think I think that's what I was trying to say, but maybe I didn't come off so clear. But no, it's a good you know, Rav Linus, the first time I went to Chana and Eitan's for Shabbos, I remember Eitan said to me, he's like, I can't deal with dirty dishes, right? I have to do dishes on Shabbos, right? It's like I can't you know, that is definitely a thing also that carries over. Dishes is another great example of, yeah, you can do absolutely, you need your dishes for, you know, you had enough people for company for, you know, in the evening, you need them for the morning. Of course, you can do the dishes to use that morning. But also, if like your house looks a mess on Shabbos with all the dishes that pile up, like happens in my house, like maybe you need the Shabbat presentation to be such that you wash the dishes. But it's not hachana anymore for chol; it's now hachana for Shabbat, even though you're not going to use the dishes on Shabbat in that sense.
Well, there's one more after. I have a cousin who's a well-known posek, and his mother, who's quite a person, washes the dishes on Shabbos. So he explains to the kids, your Bubba is unfortunately mentally disturbed. So she does the dishes.
So, Rabbi Jessica and then Noam, I also saw, right? Please.
Couldn't you theoretically say that making the bed is makabeh patish of a bed?
Yeah, except it's like the thing that I think do all the time. You undo and do the bed. It's not really finishing the bed in the same way. I think it's
Yeah, I'm vaguely remembering some cases about shutters when they're talking about kind of bon air stuff, where there's also like makabeh patish concerns about something that you do every day.
Yeah, this is right. And shutters in the Gemara, shutters are not like a window we have with glass. It's like an opening, a slit opening, and you have a thing that you put in the opening. And they're like, oh yeah, it's a sui lekach, right? I think actually that is the language that's used there. And it's meant to be opened and closed all the time. Beds are meant to be made and unmade. They really just the question is, are you preparing something for tomorrow, for Sunday or for Saturday night, which is Sunday when you're not going to use it on Shabbos, or is it like you want your house to look a certain way on Shabbos? So it's Noah, I saw your hand too.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to understand this whole Magen Avraham, including the first part that we didn't read about the talus, because it seems like there he's paskening that you shouldn't fold it. But then he just switches to talking about the bed, and then the weird thing for me about that is I feel like you could take the svara about the bed and apply it to the talus in the way all of us have been saying, that it's just like.
Well, see, the point is not about talus cleaning it. The point is about hachana l'chol. Are you preparing your talus so that it'll be nice and ready for you the next morning, so that you can carry it, because you don't want to walk down the street with a pile of a lump of talus. You want it to be nice and folded. If that's your reason, then it's usher. But if you're folding it, yes, but I agree with you. If you're folding the talus now because you don't want a lump of talus lying around on your couch or on your table, so then it's for now.
Yeah. But
I will say, started from the question of cleaning.
He just doesn't seem to be saying that about the talus, whereas he is saying that about the bed.
Yeah,
I don't understanding it.
So I don't know his reality necessarily with the talus and where the talus is going, but do me a favor, read the beginning of the Magen Avraham. This is Vav, since you asked about it.
Yeah. ולכן אסור לקבל הטלית, אף על פי שמצוות ציצית כל היום, ויכול להתעטף בו, מכל מקום, כיוון שאין בדרך להתעטף בו, הווה כמי שיש לו החליף. And therefore it's forbidden to fold the talus, even though there's a mitzvah tzitzit, which applies all day long, to wrap oneself in it. Nonetheless, because one isn't intending to wrap oneself in it all day long, it's as if you have another change of clothing, and when you have another change of clothing, then you're not allowed to fold.
Yeah, I think I have a feeling. I don't know for sure. I didn't look in the original source for this, but the Magen Avraham is responding, I think, to a logic that's out there where people are like, well, I fold my talit on Shabbat because I could put it on again. I don't know, who knows, right? Like, I'm allowed to wear tzitzit all day. And he's like, don't tell me that. That's, you're not going to put it back on. Like, don't like make up this fiction in your head that you can put it back on when I know you're not. And that's your excuse for folding your talus. I think he would probably, my sense is, I'm not the Magen Avraham, obviously, that if it is like Rav Nachum said, like, I'm going to throw my talus on the couch and it's going to look bad and I don't want that, then I could fold it and put it away for Shabbos, right? Because that's hachana l'Shabbat and not hachana l'chol, and not pretend hachana l'Shabbat, same way.
And then I'm reading off Al HaTorah, and the next thing I have is square brackets with the letters Shin Lamed in them.
Yeah, that's his source. It's I can't remember the name of the book right now, but
Shibbolei
Leket. Okay, yeah. Okay, so that's the Magen Avraham will often give his sources for where he gets all this stuff. It's one of those. Ori, I saw your hand. Go for it.
This is Sir Rav Nachum. So you were saying that the bed thing, and hypothetically the talus also, it's all about hachana. It just seems that when you're in the Shulchan Aruch in Gimel, it's so embedded in this larger discussion of the other, kibbutz and improving the begadim, that I see that there's a shift, because he immediately says mekablim kelim b'Shabbat l'tzorech Shabbat. So it's almost as like there's no issue at all here, but we're getting a little confused, because in the Gemaras there's mekablim that I think was more part of improving the beged. So are we clear? Are we sure that in this step of the Shulchan Aruch he's just sort of like, we're not talking about that kind of kibbutz related stuff anymore, or improving begadim anymore, or kelim. We're just talking about hachana, for the week. So it's there because it's it's connected parenthetically, but not in the essence of the halacha.
Can I answer this, Rav
I mean,
Nachum, actually?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say, because I think this was part of my point of actually going through the organization of the Shulchan Aruch before, is don't assume that a Siman is like one malacha. I think that's actually, that's not the way the Torah and the Shulchan Aruch organize this. And they organize it by, we're talking about the general thing of preparing clothing on Shabbat that wasn't quite prepared, or preparing garments on Shabbat that weren't quite prepared. And so some of them are because of kibbutz and libun, some of them are because of makeh batish, and some of them are a different category of like hachana. And so those, but they're all in the category of this set of objects, right, that have dirt on them, or that are not just dirt, but that are not in their full state of gleaming perfection, so to speak. So
is that because the Torah Shulchan Aruch is a manual?
Yes, exactly. I think that's what it is, and I think that's what the intro of the tour in Shin Aleph that Rav Nachum had us read is so amazing. Right? He gives his whole organizational structure based on that. So, Rav Nachum, did I do a good job?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely.
There's just concepts from the
that he's
Gemara popping in
adding,
here.
I think that the Shulchan Aruch is adding a criteria that we didn't necessarily see really before so much. Maybe we saw a little bit. Because the next statement in the Shulchan Aruch is Dafka ba'adam u'b'chadashim, b'adam echad, b'chadashim she'adayin lo nichbasu. All those criteria that we saw, and he's adding in the beginning, it also has to be for that day. Mm-hmm. So why is he adding that? It has to be for that day. Because if it's for folding it for another day, then it'll be usher. So I think that it is kind of a tangential thing, but he's following the lead of the Shulchan Aruch. I think the Magen Avraham is just following the lead of the Shulchan Aruch.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but right, the rest of the stuff in there we did see actually might be, an actual malacha, right? If you have really good folding, or at least karov l'malacha. But the Shabbat, even if you fulfill all the other categories of the Gemara, if you do it for Tzorach Sunday, that's a problem. And that's not because of the same thing. It's because of that's a separate category of hachana. So, good. I want to jump a little bit because we're running short on time here. I want to look actually, because I think Zayin is very important. You unfortunately get my bias here, but we clothes get dirty on Shabbat, and like, what do you do? Is always the question. And so I want to actually look. I'll read the Shulchan Aruch, and then I want to look at the Taz, because I think he does a nice job of presenting a theory about all this. So so we saw this a little bit, but teach shall big dose. You have some not mud, clay, whatever we want to call it, that's on your clothes, shomi bifnim. You can rub it from the inside of the garment, right? Because it's not proven, it's not obvious that this is looking like you're cleaning your clothes. It could be you're scratching, who knows, like something else. We saw this similar to running, not running, to walking for health on Shabbos. So lo bechutz, but you can't do it from the outside of the garment. Because that is, if you do it from the outside, that's actually very similar to this libun, a milaben category. All right, umigara robitziporn, you can scrape it with your fingernail. But some people say that's only if it's a liquid, aval yavesh asur dehave tochen. But if it's dry, you can't scrape it with your fingernail or maybe with the back of a knife, because that is another malacha, right? Here we have another one coming in, which is grinding. Right, you can't grind on Shabbat, and when you scrape the thing off, you grind it into little bits. So I want to look at the Taz in Vav here, the Have Tochen. Aaron, is that you want to read, or Aaron wants to read? Go for it.
Nireli, v'zeh davka sheyesh mamashut tit al habeged, ukshu megared sham, az noflim pirurei hatit zedem el tochen. So I think that this is specifically when there's like an actual thing on your garment, such that when you're scratching it off, little pieces are coming off, and then that's like tochen. But if it just is like a stain and you're scratching it off, that's not tochen. That's why if you have a stain, but there's not actually the substance on it, you can scratch it off. And it's dry. So you can scratch over the finger and remove it so that you can daven in cleanliness. Which it seems like in some way sort of analogous to what we were talking about with the bed, of the sort of broader meta principles about Shabbat, that we don't want you to look like a piece of trash or have your home be, a mess for the sake of keeping Shabbat.
Yeah, well, this is, as long as you're not doing an actual malacha itself, right? That in order for appearing here, it's like standing before Hashem, right? You don't want to stand before Hashem in like you begadim soim, right? Like, so, okay, we're going to give you a way that you can, not look completely awful on Shabbos when you go to daven, at the same time without violating Shabbos.
If it's not a malacha, why does he have to give a reason for you to be allowed to do it?
Well, because there's lots of things that are karov malacha that are either look like a malacha and are asur, or it looks a little. It does. If you're getting a stain off, it's getting pretty close to milaben. So.
מנראה לעניות דעתי, דלדעת הר"ן בשאר פוסקים שזכרתי בסימן ש"כ, גבי סחיטה. So, and I also think that, given that according to the Ran, at least as I see him and the other poskim in Shinkaf regarding schita, that you're only chayav on schita if you are pleased by the fact that you have done schita. I
don't think it's just you're pleased that it's what
is released. Yeah.
I squeeze water out of a garment, this is not the kibbutz version. This is the other version of schita, is where I want the final result of it. Like, right. So okay. That's why this is gonna be important. So
yeah. Is that maybe right? Maybe sorry, that is what I was trying to get at. But you can gam betochen havaken. Right. Given that you're not you have no desire to do tchina. Tichun.
Yeah. That works too. It's the right verb.
This is also Devar Shalom Mitkaven, that you're not trying to do tichun, so it's not actually, doesn't actually count as.
Yeah. It's an interesting heter because, of course, we have with schita, right, the second kind, which is like a cleaning kind, which is where you want to get rid of the stuff in there. And maybe Tochen also has a version of that. I think that's what the Mechaber is trying to say. And he seems to reject that. He seems to think that Tochen, if you're not doing it to actually get the ground up stuff, right, to use for something, or you want the ground up stuff, then maybe it doesn't rise to the level of Tochen, and it's mutar at that point. So. It's a huge pula here.
Yeah, but it's right because right. If you look at the Shabbat Hilchot, he says you can't take off hardened mud from your shoe because it's tochen, and so that's how he paskins. But I think that he's not necessarily arguing on that entirely. I think he's just saying it's in siruf with other things. It's a partial psak. He's saying, well, it's not really tochen; it's near tochen, and if it's a small amount. And you're doing it just so that you can pray with clean clothes, and it's okay. But he didn't. I don't think he rejected the entire idea of it.
Yeah, I think you need another factor, and it needs to not be a lot. I think those two things are there, but it's but it is. He's trying to give a leniency in that approach to some extent. So, but Ori, go ahead.
Real quick, is Tzoah not specifically excrement?
It generally is, but it doesn't, and that's going to be actually. We'll move.
But the reason I ask is because that, in connection to like in a davening environment, doesn't that elevate the concern to something more pressing? From other sugyot where we know you can't have those kind of smells around in a tefillah environment.
So, Rev Lexie, please.
Well, I think the idea is if it's in the case where there's not that much mamashut, it might not, and especially depending on whether it's stinky or not, it might not be actively ma'akev the tefillah. It just might be not so like mechubad of a way to be davening.
But all right, I want to we're going to do it outside a little bit, but there's some ideas out there. So like, what if, like, for instance, I have a child and the child gets urine on my clothes, right, on Shabbos, and I want to daven, or I just don't want to be walking around with urine clothes. What are some of the ideas out there, mostly from the Tosfot, as to like how to fix this? Alan, go for it.
The main one is putting your hands on the spot and washing them, pouring water over them, so that you're actually clearing your hands in a way that is making the garment more dirty.
Good, right? Because the idea here is I do netilat yadayim over the garment essentially, right? And my hands are like netilat yadayim is taking the dirt off my hands and getting on the garment. So here what's the language that's used? What am I doing? I'm not cleaning the garment. I'm doing what?
Derech lichluch.
It is derech lichluch, but there's another thing is like I'm mevatel, right? I'm negating the urine, but I'm not cleaning the garment. I think that's the major difference that's coming in here in the post scheme, right? I'm not saying that there's a big debate about whether or not you can actually do that. It seems to be rejected actually, but there's the other idea, which is what? Ruben.
Is this in the Beis Yosef when he says that Rabbeinu Tam actually would only allow you to wash your hands separately and then dry them?
Exactly.
Because pouring water looks too much like cleaning.
Beautiful. Yes. So he says, yeah, why Rabbeinu Tam says, because the first one I think is the Rabbeinu Tam says, wash your hands. And then there's some water left on your hands. You put it on the garment, and there's some debate of like, is it enough? You need to be a revi'it to actually cancel urine. But generally that's the kind of more accepted thing is that you would that you would wash your hands. And in fact, everyone look in Yud let's go back to the Shulchan Aruch in Yud, and maybe this is where I'll end. In the Ramah, he says, "V'lachen mutar l'nagev yadav beveged shetil bo tinok mei raglaim kedev levatlam shein zerach derech lichluch be'alma." Right, so you can dry your hands on this spot where you had some urine on it. Shein zerach derech lichluch be'alma. That's just you're actually getting it dirtier, but you're negating the urine, and that's really your goal, not to wash the garment. You can't actually pour water directly on it in order to do that. So this is, this comes up not only with children, but I think it's at least in my life has come up a lot with kids when they were younger in particular. And so I thought that very important. And, I remember like Rachel would ask me, like, what do we do? Like in this situation. So here's the Shulchan Aruch helping us out here with the reality. Just one more thing we're out of time. So I will say, well, just somebody, Yud Bet, right? There's a whole question about, I can't dry a cup that has water or wine in it. What's going on there? What's the worry? It's in the Shulchan Aruch.
Shulchan Aruch says atil de schita, but we also saw somewhere earlier that maybe there's an issue about cleaning.
Good, great. It could be cleaning, could be schita, right? There's a whole question about if schita is an issue at all with wine, right? Because we actually have a Mishnah. People know this, right? You can use you have a filter set up before Shabbos, and you pour the wine through as long as you get wine on both sides, which we'll get into filtering questions later, right? That seems fine, and there's no worry about schita with wine there. So why is wine a cleaning thing? I'll leave it there for you to look, and maybe I'll just end with one nice piece about the machbesh, right? This press. I don't know if people saw it, but I have the Piskei Teshuvot that I added that talks about shoehorns on Shabbos and whether or not a shoehorn is the modern day thing that's equivalent to a machbesh. And the professional ones, he says, where you actually have to screw them in are asur, but the ones that are tree horns, shoehorns that you have like at home, those are mutar, he says, to put in the shoe. So it's I don't know if people use those anymore.
Shoe tree is what you mean.
Shoe tree, thank you.
Okay.
What did I call it? Shoehorn? So what I call it?
Shoehorn is something else, yeah.
Yeah, it's a shoe tree, yeah. So
it stretches the leather.
Yeah. So if you use those, it's like, just to think maybe that thing fell out. There's actually a good use for that seif.
Shoes were all bespoke at that time. Mm-hmm. So one of the ways of kind of form itself on the person. Yeah. So the difference between the shoe tree and that which did the connection. This is Reb Nachum's prerogative, but I want to thank Lexie, Rabbi Lexie, and Rabbi Joel for this very good share. Thank you very much. I want to say only one addition is we had that problem with blood. What's the pasuk for that? It's a pasuk you all know. I'll say the pasuk you'll know. Out damn spot. Right? Because that's the problem with them. Third thing is I'm giving at least half the share next week. And that was again from the Rambam, Aleph, and Zion of Shabbos. And I think a lot of the ideas there are also very well connected today. But it was supposed to be my introduction. I got sick, and then I was in Ovel. But I think it's Kedai. Take a look. What are the major principles? What are the major definitions? How's the Rambam organize it? So thank you, Reb Nachum.
Thank you, everybody. I just want to say one thing also to Ori. You might be right about what you were saying about the whether the question is solely about Hachana L'Chol. I'm re-looking at the Mishnah there. It is mentioned Bo B'Yom, and Bo B'Yom could have to do with Hachlachlif, because whatever, it's complicated, but it could be related. Yeah. So you might be right that there's something going on there about that. It's not called Lachlif if you don't need it today, right? So then it's really a part of Lachlif. Anyway, so before I reject what you're saying, I may agree with you. I may agree with you. I'm always reevaluating. Okay, so everybody, to both Joel and Lexie, really good cheer. I'm really impressed that you got through so many seifim in such a short time, and we really saw them in a good way. So thank you. Shukayach.
Thank you.
Everyone.